everybody. Welcome. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together Conversations. How's everybody doing? I want to welcome all of our friends on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. If you're watching us on YouTube, will you do me a favor? Just scroll down a little bit and hit that subscribe button. And why don't you like the video while you're there? That helps us a whole lot with our numbers. We really do appreciate it. All our friends are Twitter. Make sure that you retweet the show. And if you want to be part of the conversations, go ahead and put in your comments. And I have you right here on my phone, and I can check you out and make sure that our guest gets your questions and or comments. This week, I'm super excited. I know. I've gotten messages. You're always excited. I know I'm always excited because all my guests are really cool. But this week I have a really cool guest. His name is Michael Holtz, and let me give you his bio real quick. Michael Holtz was diagnosed with colorectal cancer in March of 2012 and has since been a passionate advocate for cancer patients, survivors, and caregivers. He is the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network State Lead Ambassador for Tennessee. Say that 3 times fast. Sits on the board of directors for the Cancer Support Community of East Tennessee, and is an advocate peer reviewer representing the Colon Cancer Alliance. In his book, It's Not Harder Than Cancer, Michael shares the sometimes gory details of his cancer experience and the lessons he learned during treatment. In his professional life, Michael is senior communications specialist for Oak Ridge Associated Universities. He's an award-winning cancer advocate, writer, speaker, frequent media guest, and blogger. Michael lives in Knoxville with his lovely Sarah, his wife of 25 years, and their rescue dog, a golden basset named Marley. And we'll put that link before we're done. But let's bring Michael onto the show. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hello, sir. It's great. I'm glad to be here.
Good. I'm so glad. I for some reason I always forget to really acknowledge where my guests are from until I read their bio. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're over there. So right. You're in Tennessee. You're in Tennessee.
Knoxville, Tennessee, yeah, the gateway to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
I love Tennessee. Okay, I'm a foodie. For everybody who knows me knows I'm a foodie. And although you're not famous for tacos, I won't hold that against you. You folks have some of the best biscuits and jellies and jams out there.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Now, my guests usually like to hear how I know. My viewers like to know how I got my guests. We actually met on the
Man Up to Cancer.
Man Up to Cancer page. Yes, I was damn it. I know there's cancer in the name of the page.
Right, exactly.
Somewhere in there. But we officially met in one of the meetups. There was this meetup one night. And it's one of those things that just kind of happens. There's only 3 of us in the meetup, and you and I ended up talking. And I just realized how much things in common we kind of had, right. Especially our good looks.
Of course, absolutely.
I know it's obvious to the audience, but how are you doing? Let's start with there. How are you doing? How are
I'm
things?
Great. Yeah, it's been a busy day, but I'm doing well. Yeah, and health-wise, everything is really, really good. So.
Cool. Well, I know there's a lot of information because we share some stuff in common. So I don't want to keep holding. So Michael Holtz, tell us how you put it together.
Well, you mentioned it a little bit in my bio. So I'm a writer, and it is actually my favorite way to put anything together. I work for a company called the Oak Ridge Associated Universities, and I kind of see myself as the brand journalist for the company. So I get to ferret out all the really cool stories about the work that our people do, stuff that they do on the side. I just interviewed somebody who wrote a children's book, and he's donating proceeds from his children's book to a foundation that supports people with obsessive compulsive disorder. I get to talk. We have a social scientist who is looking forward to what does life look like for companies after COVID-19 is over? How has this past, 18 months, 35 years, whatever it feels like, how is that going to affect how our companies look going forward. And so I get to tell those stories. I host our company podcast. I write content for our website. I do media work. So I get to tell those stories, and it's a lot of fun.
So what those that hour of sleep that you get a day, is that good for you?
Right.
Or are you adding time to the day that we don't know about? How do you?
I wish, right? That'd be a nice superpower.
So can we start with? I don't know. Let's with you. Where would you like to start your story?
You pick. We can start with cancer. We can,
Yeah. Well, let's start right before the cancer. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about what your life was like.
So, so I'm 52. When I turned 40, I got on a really big health kick. I've always been a large person and really got serious about losing weight. And I started running and I was doing marathons and just really like I lost 100 pounds in 2 years and um, felt like I was living my best life, Um, and then in December of 2011, I started having some funky digestive issues. Um, Feeling like I had to go and nothing would happen, or couldn't get to the toilet fast enough, that sort of thing. And then in February of 2012, there was blood in the toilet. And my primary care doctor said, you need a colonoscopy. And so I went and I met with my gastroenterologist, and I'd been reading about celiac disease and wheat allergies and that sort of thing, and thinking that maybe that was my issue. And he kind of agreed. I mean, he looked at my symptoms and he said, we're diagnosing a lot more people with celiac disease. And, it could be that, it could be IBS. I wasn't even thinking cancer at all. But when I had the colonoscopy on March 27th of 2012, I remember going to sleep and having a delightful nap while I was having my colonoscopy. But then I remember this nurse just like clapping her hands, like, you've got to get up, you've got to get up. And I need to take you to the doctor's office. And I didn't realize at the time that was not normal, because you sort of come out of it and, if everything's good, they just kind of send you away. So I didn't realize that going to see the doctor wasn't the normal thing. And he closed his office door and he said, I hate to tell you this, but you have cancer. And he showed us on the scope, on the screen, what he was looking at, this tumor in my rectum that was about 6 centimeters long. So, and just
Wow.
this big, black, tarry thing that changed my life.
It's flashbacking to things that I went through. It's like, how dare you? I don't want to go there.
Right, you're triggering me.
Because as men, we sometimes don't pay attention to details. Like,
right.
Even even as a gay man, I don't always pay attention to details. But like blood in our stool or details that, like, we always want to chuck it up to something else.
Absolutely.
Did some time pass before you said, okay, this is getting serious, or was it kind of immediate?
It was it was really like so a little bit of backstory. At the time, I worked for the American Cancer Society. So I knew that blood in the toilet was not something you wanted to see. So when I did, I called my primary care doctor and saw him almost immediately, and he scheduled the colonoscopy. So like as soon as I saw it, I knew, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but we need to figure it out. So the time from like the onset of symptoms to diagnosis was about 4 months.
Oh, wow.
So not a really long time. But if I had waited any longer, we might not be having this conversation.
Now, was there history of cancer in your family,
No,
or?
absolutely. I was the first person in my family diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah,
So,
I just think of it as an overachiever. I just wanted to be the first one
right.
with them.
I'm going to do
Y'all haven't had
something no one else has done in my family. So,
losers. I got this. I got this.
right.
Okay, before we move on, can we talk colonoscopies for a minute?
Yeah, for sure.
Because how was your first? How many have you had? How many colonoscopies have
I
you
have
had?
had three or four. Um, so, you know, everyone fears the prep, right? You hear the nightmare stories about you're going to take this, pile of laxatives and you're going to be, sitting on the toilet for hours and all of those things. And, it's true. Let's just be real. It's not a fun experience. Um, for my second colonoscopy, though, I had a colostomy bag, which is even more exciting than doing a colonoscopy prep because you almost need to just tape a garbage bag to yourself and spit it out. You know? So, but I tell people, still, like I would do the colonoscopy prep every day of my life to never hear those words again. As horrible, as horrible as it is, and it's not as bad as it used to be. Even in the couple of years that I had them in a row, the the products changed, and so it wasn't an all day thing. All of that. I would do it every day to never hear those words.
Yeah, my first one was tragic because I was cocky, and no pun intended.
Right,
But they gave me, for those of you who are following, the prep is this devil juice that they give you to drink, and there's different forms of it. Like some people get this big jug of to drink. Some people get the two little bottles. Some people get just laxative pills, which is
right,
kind of. I would prefer the pills because it's just like pretty much just no flavor.
right.
Um, but the first time that I did mine, because I've had three, so I'm waiting to see like, is it three or four? Because either we're tied or you're
I think
beating
we're
me
tied.
out.
I think we're
Not
tied.
that I'm competitive, but
I think we're.
um, but
Yeah.
yes. But they gave me these two little bottles, and they were like, take one the day before or 24 hours before, and then take one 12 hours before, or something like that. And I'm like, okay. So I take one, and it just kind of goes into does some prep. Uh, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Hold on. Sorry. I'm losing my microphone. Keep talking while I get my microphone set up.
Okay.
My
So yeah,
earbuds.
so the first one that I had, they basically send you this huge. It's like a month supply of Miralax, right?
There we are. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Here we are. We're back. So
Okay.
I think my earbuds died. Of course they would. It's been an all-day thing. It's been
Right.
for anybody who's watched the last shows, everything I've done today, my earbuds have like, nope, you're not going to hear.
We're not doing it today.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they gave me the first one, which was just the two little bottles, and I drank the first one. I was like, I got
Yeah.
this.
Right.
I got this. Then I took the second one, and I came and got comfortable on the couch, and that was the first mistake. I got relaxed because I could not run to that bathroom fast enough. Yeah.
You're right.
Yes. And but then the second one was in the hospital, so I was right there. And then the
Right.
third one was with the ostomy bag, and I would just come and sit down on the couch, and all of a sudden it'd be like poof, like a little puff,
Yep.
clean it out.
Gotta go change the bag. Yep.
So once you get diagnosed, what's the process for you like?
So I underwent a whole battery of. So I had an endoscopic ultrasound. I had a flexible sigmoidoscopy, which is a delightful procedure where my surgeon was actually having a conversation with me while he was sticking a probe in my backside. We're talking about running marathons while, I can feel my guts being like torn apart by whatever he's probing me with. And then, PET scan and a CT scan, and they kind of match all the images together. And so that process, all told, took about a month. And then I started, once they staged it, it was stage 3B. Once they staged it, then the treatment plan came together, and I started radiation and oral chemotherapy in May of 2012.
Wow. All right, let me just remind everybody, you are watching Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today is Michael Holtz, and we're talking cancer preps and probes. So stick around for more conversation. Please, if you're watching us on any of the channels, make sure you join the conversation. If you're curious about any of the cancer procedures or any information, please stick around and join in. So once you start treatment, chemo, radiation, surgery, what happens?
I did. So 28 rounds of radiation, and radiation should never happen to that area of the body ever. But it does. And oral chemo, I was on a drug called Zolota, and for the most part that was fine, except that it felt like I had electrical probes in my head, and like I was just being zapped back and forth. So, the whole time I was on it. And I was on that for 5.5 weeks.
Wow.
And then I had surgery in August after the radiation burns had healed. I had to wear adult diapers, the whole thing. Like, I tell the whole story of like walking, the nurse at the radiation center, like going up to her and saying, "Is it supposed to leak like this?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's perfectly normal." Like, it would have been nice if someone told me before, so I could have Depends instead of having to walk in Walgreens and hope I don't make a mess before I get out of the store, And then in August of 2012, I had surgery. And then in September, I started 6 rounds or 12 rounds, 6 months of chemo. So 12 rounds every other week of full Fox, which, is the whole sit in the chemo ward all day and then take a pump home for 2 days and come back and have it disconnected and all of that.
Wow.
So it was 11 months of treatment total.
Wow. So we were pretty much there. Chemo, and then I didn't have to have surgery onto my ostomy, but I it's interesting to be able to hear another man talk about wearing diapers, and
Right.
I was telling people, like, I would have stuck with the diapers. They made my butt look really good.
Right.
So it was really cushioning me. But it was a pain in the ass when you travel, because trying to get on those baby changers, people just frown on that.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right.
They never can hold you up, which is really sucks.
They're not. Yeah.
It's like, but change me.
And it felt like sitting on a tube sock. Like, they're not comfortable.
They're not comfortable, which is why I know why babies cry all the time.
Absolutely.
So what's going through your brain? Because again, and I'm so glad that you're here and we have these similar experiences, because it gives me a chance to talk to another dude about like things that only affect a dude.
Right.
Because when you're going through, for those of you watching, at least for me, when I was going through radiation and you go and it's anal cancer and they're zapping you in the groin area, and they don't tell you right away, by the way,
now
radiation.
The tech did say, you're going to want to move your junk out of the way because you're going to get burned. So I was like, okay, which way should I move it?
Are you a lefty or a righty? But it's like afterwards, I didn't realize that, like, the radiation afterwards, not just because the burning is horrible,
right,
and the healing is horrible, but what it does to the junk afterwards too. Sometimes it's a little like, hello, like Excuse me, I came in with a little more than I like. Can somebody give me the rest of my
Like, I
chunk back?
think I left something on the table. Um, yeah. It's just it's just not that whole area is, I mean, my radiation oncologist called it the gluteal crease. He said, you're going to get blisters in your gluteal crease. And I was like, he was like, I was like, oh, I got
Oh,
the crack. You're talking
yeah,
about,
yeah. Let's call it what it is, sir. Let's call it what it
right.
is.
I'm going to have blisters on my crack. And I did. And yeah, it's not a good time. It's not a thing that anyone should have to go through, which is why I'm so um, kind of obsessive about telling people about getting screened, because no one should have to do that. Just, and then with the surgery, um, so the tumor was bigger. The scarring from radiation was pretty extensive. So my rectum couldn't be saved at all. And my surgeon said that um, the margins were really small. Like it was a millimeter margin between like the cancer and my prostate, that sort of thing. And he's like, the thing about the male pelvis is it's so small, there's only so much you can do, because like our hips don't expand because we're not having babies. So,
Women.
right, exactly. So, it's tiny, and everything's right there. So, um, he said, and he was disappointed that I ended up with a permanent colostomy, because he had said the whole time leading up to surgery that, we'll go in, we'll get the tumor, you may have a temporary one, but we'll put you back together. And then he didn't know if he got all the cancer, because, the workspace is so small that, he got all of the tissue that he could. But probably the most amazing moment of the whole experience was when he came into my hospital room 4 days after surgery to say that the pathology report showed that there was no living cancer in my body.
Wow.
So yeah, so and that's the whole ball game right there. So um, yeah, that was a pretty amazing moment. And my pastor was there, and Sarah was there, and like we just huddled together and like cried and held on to each other and prayed. And it was is truly one of the most amazing um, moments of my life.
Pretty cool. Uh, through that whole process, from beginning to that moment, where is your mental state?
So really I'm a Christian. I go to a Lutheran church. My Southern Baptist friends can make of that what they want, but I love my Lutheran church. We From the moment when we drove out of the parking lot and we were turning into traffic, because I haven't eaten in like 24 hours. I'm starving. Like we're going to lunch, and Daniel, this sense of peace just came over both of us in the car, and I just looked at Sarah and I said, "We're going to be okay." Like we didn't know what we were up against. We didn't know what the stage was. We didn't know, am I going to live? Am I going to die? Any of that. But we just both had this sense of peace of whatever happens, it's going to be fine. And that was, pretty much our, signal to be positive about the whole experience. And then so two things. In talking to other people, basically, if anyone said something like, "Oh, we were afraid you were going to tell us that," like we shut that down. Like, sorry, man, my doctor didn't even think it was going to happen. So, like, you can't say you knew I was going to have to. Like, so there's that, and then I was wide open about pretty much every detail from that day. We told our families, and I wanted to make sure because we don't have any children, but we have 9 nieces and nephews now, and some of our nieces and nephews were on social media. They were on Facebook, and I didn't want to put anything out there until I knew they all knew. But once that was cleared and Sarah was cool with it, like every step of the journey, I put either on Facebook or on Caring Bridge to let people know this is what this is. I was working, like I said, for the American Cancer Society. I wanted to demystify the process of like, this is how this works. This is what cancer is like. Yep, it sucks, but we're going to live, and we're going to get through it. And not everyone does. I can't even count the number of people I've lost that I've met on the journey, but we're gonna get through it, and I'm gonna keep telling the story.
So you were already working with the Cancer Society before you got diagnosed?
Oh yeah, I went to work for the Cancer Society in 2002. So yeah, I had been working there for 10 years when I was diagnosed.
Wow.
Then, sorry, go ahead.
No, for the sarcastic in me, I'm like, of course you would. Of course.
Well, no, and it's one of the things my gastroenterologist said was, he said, it's ironic that I'm telling you you have colorectal cancer in March, which is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, and you work for the American Cancer Society. Excuse me. So, yeah.
So were you applying for the poster child for cancer?
Right?
Because it totally sounds set up to me right now. I don't know.
Exactly. Like I was applying for a job. I was like, hey.
Right here, poster next year. We got this. But you know what? I think for people watching, the setup has a lot to do with, I believe, with how your treatment or the rest of the journey is going to take. My doctor here in Newport Beach, California, Dr. Bobby Rad, if you ever watch this, you're the man. Yes, you were there in March for awareness. I was there on Cinco de Mayo to get my diagnosis. That's how Mexican I am, folks. That's how Mexican I am.
See, there's a whole nother reason to party, right?
If you can't make jokes out of that, then what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
But yeah, we were getting ready for a Cinco de Mayo party, and I was still having some issues. It's a long story, but we called the doctor because I wasn't in till Friday, and it was a Tuesday, and he's like, if you can get here in an hour, I can see you, but if you can get here in an hour. And I was like, of course, being an advocate for other things for so many years, I knew, like, they don't call you in to just pat you on the back and give you a lollipop.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Good for you. You're our 1,000 customer. And so I on the way there, I'm like, I know something's up, something's going to happen. I know. Yeah. But Dr. Rad and he's such an amazing doctor. I cried a little, but I was on the way. I'm like, I'm not going to cry. And a couple of tears were coming out, and he got up from his chair and put his hand on my shoulder. And he was like, look at me. And I was like, It's like, look at me. So I looked at him. He goes, we got this.
That's awesome.
And it was the first time in years that I had a doctor that was like, we got this. Like, it's not you, or I'm going to take care of you, or it's like we. And yep. I tell Christian, whenever I get to speak in public, I tell folks, especially because I do a lot of UCI doctors and nurses and therapists and stuff, I'm like, when you make it about you as much as the patient is in your hands, and we will trust you. Does that make sense?
Yep. So Dr. Greg Midas, if he's watching, was my surgeon. And it was pretty much the same thing. Like, we've got this. You're going to be fine. Like, we're going to put together the treatment plan that's going to take care of you, like all the things. So it was great.
That's pretty cool. So for everybody watching, this is Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza, and we're talking to Michael Holtz, and we're talking about cancer diagnosis, treatments, and having a good setup with your doctor and your support system.
Mhm.
Uh, so once you're better, and
Yep.
better, I'll put that
Right.
because I feel like once you've gone through cancer,
You're
I know
never
about me.
really better. Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like I see the world through it. I saw the world through different eyes. I had complications from a fistula that
Okay.
was right above an artery that burst.
Oh
So
God.
I nearly died. Well, I died. They brought me back, suckers. But they brought me back, and I I really feel like my faith in God, in the universe, in life, in my fellow humans, like everything just kind of shifted like 90 degrees. Not 180, folks. No, I'm not that good. But it was like 90 degrees so that I could see the world just like, hey,
Oh
this
yeah.
is the no pun intended, this is the shitty part of life, and this is the cool part of life. And I'm happy right here in the middle. Does that make sense?
Yep. Oh, totally. Yeah. That whole like your whole perception of everything changes, and in the middle of chemo, I discovered this book. So like when you're in chemo and treatment, the whole thing, you're exhausted like all the time. And so, I'd have chemo like on a Wednesday, and then I was shot through like the weekend. So I read books. I read books in the chemo chair. I read books at home. I read 75 books during the 11 months that I was
Wow.
in treatment. One of the books that I read, because I was out of books, I went trolling through Sarah's collection on her nightstand, and this book screamed out. It was like God was telling me, you need to read this book. And this book is called 1000 Gifts. The author's name is Anne Voskamp. And it has this picture of a woman's hands holding a bird's nest and like, very frou frou. And I was like, really? Like this book, you know? Um, and I read it, and it changed my life. If a book can ever change your life, that book changed my life. Um, it's a book about gratitude during difficult circumstances. And so finding 3 things a day, no matter how shitty the day is, to be grateful for. And they don't have to be big things. We can all be grateful for the roof over our head, the food on the table. That stuff's easy. It's the being grateful for the sound of a child's laughter, or, if they're outside playing, just the sound of their footfall, on the cement if they're playing basketball, or like the sound of my dog barking. She doesn't bark a lot. So, it's kind of a big deal when she does. Um, those sorts of things, and to write them down. Essentially, the challenge is to find 1000 gifts in the course of a year, because you write down 3 things every day.
Yeah.
But she talks about it through the lens of like friends of hers who lost children and had diseases and lost jobs, and really difficult, crappy stuff that happens to everybody. But how God is still sending us, even when it's crappy, God is still showering us with gifts if we will be present enough to notice them.
Yep.
Um, and that changed everything for me. Um, I write about that in my book. I talk about gratitude with lots of people. I'm kind of a gratitude evangelist. So it is one of those things that it seems so simple, but it is truly one of those things that will totally change your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because a neighbor of mine brought me a movie, and it's right over there, but I don't want to get up and get it. And but it's one of those movies like they lost their kid, and they just became so grateful. And uh, I was raised Catholic, and when I got sober almost 14 years ago, I reconnected with my God, and which is really like him telling me, like, dude, I've been here the whole time. You were just too drunk to see me.
Right,
So I was
right.
like, okay, whatever. Like, you're gonna throw it in my face, but
By the way, raised Catholic too, so it's
so
another thing we have in common. Yeah.
yeah. So and then when I was going through cancer, Christian was here most of the time, and I would lay on the couch and I'd have a pillow nest and kind of watch movies, but it was always those movies that I think I was wanting just to connect more and like in my challenges, like, all right, if you're there, like, show me that you're there.
Right.
You're already burning away my junk. Can you just give me something, like something better?
Give me something back. Yeah.
Yeah, like, can I get some wings or the halo now? Like, what can I get in return? And then he was like, well, here you go. I'm almost going to kill you, but nah, we're going to send you back. But for folks, when I get to talk to folks who are going through it, or sometimes, I don't know if it happens to you, and I'm sure it does, people are like, hey, my cousin's going through something similar. Can you talk to him? Or my brother? Or you're like, yeah, sure. And I always bring out the humor. I'm like, if you can't joke about it right now,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's going to be so hard. And I'm like, and if you're not religious, and I'm not saying you have to be, I said, but connect to something. Because it's you. I always picture like a ship in the sea and the lighthouse. If you keep your eye on the lighthouse, you make it to shore.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. As someone who likes lighthouses too, yeah, it's you're right. It's being anchored in whether it's God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, and then especially when it comes to butt stuff, quite frankly. You have to have a sense of humor about it. I mean, I remember when I worked for the American Cancer Society, there used to be a campaign with a character called Polyp Man. And it was this colon polyp, and he looked like a combination of a blood drop and the Hamburglar, right? From McDonald's. So, but he would get arrested and put, right? So you want to catch the polyp. And when those PSA spots would air, we would invariably get a call from someone who was just bent out of shape that we weren't taking colon cancer seriously. And that was really one of the reasons why I wanted to be so open about it, but also to show the humor. Like when I have a colostomy fail, it sucks in the moment. But 10 minutes later, I'm going to be telling you a joke about how I painted the bathroom, or my bathroom's brown now. Hello, whatever. Because one, I have to go on, and if I get limited by the fact that could happen anywhere, I'm not going to leave my house. And I know there are people who have ostomies that don't. But I had a great ostomy nurse who said, this doesn't change your life. Like, you still do all of the things that you did before. You just now have an appliance.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that, because when we started, I say we, because Christian was right there with me the whole time. But when chemo started, we had this really amazing nurse, and I wish I could remember all their names. I
know.
So, okay, I was going to wait till the end, but for everybody, if you ever start going through something like this, take notes. Remember people's names. Remember nurses, because you're going to want those names later for something. And I wish I would have known that. But there was a nurse that helped us with the chemo, and she said, we were laughing, we were making the kind of joke, and she looked at us. She goes, "If you guys can make it halfway through this laughing, you'll make it all the way.
Yep.
So you're good." She goes, "So don't start cracking down, don't start going against each other." And then she told me too, like, you're gonna fall apart. She's like, she was the first one to tell me, she's like, all these people that say, Oh, my Aunt Gertrude, she went through cancer and she was happy the whole time. It's like lies, lies. He goes, that's a front we put for other people.
Lies from hell. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I finally realized it was true that there's a front that I was putting up for people. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. And the moment they walked out the door, I was like, ugh. So don't lie to people. We know.
Right.
We know.
It's okay to be honest about it and say, you know what? Today's a really shitty day. I don't feel good. And, I don't know if I can get out of my chair, because those things happen. They just did.
I started and this is one of my other tips, and I'm going to ask yours in a minute, but one of my other tips was I started an Amazon wish list, and anytime somebody messaged and said, do you need anything? Do you want anything? I would just send them the link, and I'm like, here.
Oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah.
Just, I know the candies I like. I know the creams I can use. I know like the aromas that I can handle in my room to smell better.
Right.
Like there's everything. Pick what you want or send it all. Like I'm not like
right.
But so true about the humor too. And when I took comedy class, I went to stand-up comedy classes. My first set at this showcase was a butt joke. I told the joke, and I said it today on the other show that I was telling you about. It was this. I talked about my first time going to the colorectal doctor, and true story. I'll make it really quick, folks. I walked in, and he's like, after the computer, I was like, Mr. Garza, take off your pants, and I'm like, you haven't even bought me a drink yet, and he just looked over at me, and he's like, you're one of those, And then he's doing the probe, and he's like, oh, I feel something hard, and I literally, without a beat, I turned up. I go, that's what she said. And he's like, Mr. Garza, I have my finger up your butt. And I go, well, are you going to buy me dinner? And he was just like, I see where this is going. Like, I see.
I can't win.
win. And I told him, I said, if you're going to be probing me and being in that space, and I'm like, we might as well get to know each other. Of course, I told my mom I was dating a doctor because after the third visit, I think we were in a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm finally dating a doctor, Mom.
Right.
What would be a tip you would give yourself if you could go back to that moment?
Oh, to surround yourself with the people who love you. One of the things that I have written about is if you were to take a family portrait of like all of your friends before and all of your friends during and after, like some of those faces are going to change, and that's not a bad thing. There are people that can't handle it. They just can't. And they might come back later, but they might not come back at all. We had friends who were, when I would go to chemo, would take the dog every chemo session. And about halfway through, they stopped. I haven't seen them again. I don't know why, but some people can't deal. And I totally get that. And if they were to ever come back, welcomed with open arms. But cancer's one of those things that, it gets harder for us as patients because chemo is cumulative. All of those effects, make us feel worse as we go along. And some people just can't handle it. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I think be grateful, is the most important thing. It's figure out how to be grateful even when you're having the crappiest day ever. And, I never got nausea and I didn't vomit and, all of that stuff, but, which I realize I'm lucky. The worst thing was I couldn't stand the smell of Mexican food. Right?
Okay, this conversation is over right now. You didn't go up, you didn't get nauseous, and you don't like Mexican food. Why are we even? I don't feel like this friendship is going to move any further. I just don't feel like this whole show is not going to air. Just at all.
That's right. We're done.
We're done. How dare you? That's okay. There are oranges were one of my favorite things, and I tasted them during chemo, and I got a metallic taste. And every now and then, I still get it. We could eat the same orange, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is the sweetest thing ever," and I'm like, "It is bitter. Yeah, it's nasty." I couldn't stand the smell of garlic when I was going through it, or limes.
Okay.
And never mind cleaning products. Christian tried to bleach the bathroom for me and make it. I was dying. With that. Yeah. Let me remind everybody you're watching Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today is fellow cancer survivor, conqueror, Mr. Michael Holtz, who does not like Mexican food when he was going to chemo. So if you don't want to watch the rest of the show, it's okay.
I like it now, though.
You know what, Michael? Don't backpedal. Just own it, man. Own it.
It was only for a few months. Chilaquiles is like one of my favorites.
That's what they all say, Michael, just for a couple months. But the fact is there. It happens for now. At some point, when I come to Knoxville, or you come out here, we'll have to take you to Mexican food.
I love it.
How about a message for? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm jumping before we go there. At this point, I was just enthralled. It's so cool to talk to somebody that gets me. Really. So this part of the show is where I like to invite our guests to share some words of wisdom with the audience. So, Michael Holtz, what words of wisdom would you like to share?
Oh my gosh! So, from a cancer perspective, don't say stupid things. Don't say, "Well, I had a cousin who was diagnosed with that, and she's dead." That doesn't help me. Really. I know you mean well, and you're trying to sort of I get what's going on with you, but don't do that. Just don't do it. And yeah, just, connect and take care of yourselves. If I could, to your previous question, if I could go back, the one thing I would do is not listen to my nutritionist at the cancer center. Because she said, eat whatever you can tolerate. Well, because I didn't have nausea and I didn't really have food issues except for the whole Mexican thing, I literally could eat anything I wanted to, and I did. And all of that weight that I lost before cancer, I put back on. And it's much harder to get the weight back off after cancer because your metabolism is shot to hell, and my testosterone was gone, and all of those things. So it's still a struggle, but I work out and all of those things. But I would seriously, if you get a diagnosis, take care of yourself, eat well, try to exercise as best you can. Do something, even if it's just walking to the mailbox.
Yeah, I definitely had some arguments with my nutritionist. She kept suggesting all these things that my system wasn't, because I went from 65 pounds to 123 pounds when I was in the midst of it. And I ended up in a wheelchair for about a week, but I was like, I have too cute. My butt was still cute. I'm like, I don't want to sit in a wheelchair the whole time. Are you kidding me? And so.
And look at it with a diaper. Come on, man.
I was like, if I'm going to wear a diaper, I want you to look at it. My caboose is for show, people. Right. But the only thing that I couldn't eat, and I love her for bringing it, and a friend of mine whose mom has since passed, but she was a lovely woman. She brought me shepherd's pie. She was British. Yeah. She brought me shepherd's pie. And if for anybody who's ever had shepherd's pie, that's a heavy meal. That is heavy. And I took a couple of bites, and it was, first of all, I couldn't taste it. And then it was just like lead in my stomach. It was horrible. But to counterpart Michael, the thing that brought my appetite back, and this is so true, was bean and cheese tacos. I couldn't eat for a long time. I was just I was eating with soups, noodle soup, and Fruity Pebbles was my diet.
Oh, wow.
And what finally brought it back was I was craving just more. And I asked for bean and cheese tacos, and a friend brought, and that's what brought my appetite back. But again, folks, Cinco de Mayo, I was diagnosed. Could you really deny the Mexican tree I fell out of? No, I don't think we possibly can.
Absolutely not.
So we're down to the last 10 minutes. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to bring up before we go?
Well, just, from an advocacy perspective, so I worked for the American Cancer Society until 2014, and I was sort of living in this like cancer 24/7 world because I was, still recovering, but I was working in it. And God love my boss at the time, Robert Morris, if he's watching. I called him and I said, Robert, I'm done. Like, I can't anymore, and he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, cancer 24/7. I can't do this. I'm tired of talking about it. I need to do something else. And he was like, well, can we send you on a sabbatical? Can we take a break? Can you, take a long vacation, whatever? I was like, no, really, like, I'm done, And he was so supportive, like, do whatever you need to do. He said, and I support you all the way. Daniel, 6 months later, I was back as a volunteer. So,
I think there's something I tell people: once an advocate, always an advocate. It's like the mob. You can't leave advocacy work, and you might shift in what you're talking about, but you'll always go back.
Well, and the shift is important because as a paid staff person, I was working for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network at that point. As a paid staff person, telling my story to lawmakers, not a big deal. As a volunteer, going to Washington or calling, being on a Zoom call and sharing my story, that's a big deal. So being a volunteer adds power to my cancer story to be able to affect change from a legislative perspective. So
I'm going to have to share my picture with you after we're done here. I actually, because could we be more alike? But the day that I was diagnosed, we're driving back from the doctor. And for those of you that know Southern California, we were in Newport and we're driving back to Culver City, which was about 45 minutes. And we get in the car and we're driving, and I'm texting my sister. And I'm like, I need to talk to you. And I'm messaging my other sister. I'm like, I need to talk to you. And I didn't even look at Christian. He's driving. And I'm like, I'm going to make a video when we get home. And without skipping a beat, he's like, of course you are. Like you're Daniel G. Garza. Like, what else are you going to do? Like, of course you are. Right. And there is for those of you watching, this is Michael's website that I talked about in the bio. So you can go check that out and go find his blogs and all the information that you want from him. And then for those of you that follow me know about my YouTube page, I have a 30-day diary of being diagnosed with cancer, my first 30 days with cancer, in English and Spanish.
Awesome.
But then right before we started chemo, a friend of mine came to take some photos of me in the blue. I found a blue shirt, and I had my blue wristband, and I ordered a cap with the blue ribbon because I was like, if I'm going to lose my hair, which I did, this is the new hair. I'm like, I want a cap that I want to wear through the whole thing.
Yep.
Long story short, when I was going through through rehab, I wore a cap through rehab, and it brought me good luck. So I thought, I'm going to wear the same cap through chemo.
Yeah.
And I made a poster that has the American Cancer, it's this information that I got from them. Oh, not sponsored by y'all or anything, but I was like, one day they're going to find it and they're going to call
and they're going to use it.
They're going to be like, we want to use it. And then if I'm better, I'm like, no, you can't use it now because that's like 6 years ago. I'm no.
I look better now, yeah.
And here we are talking to you.
Here we are, I know, right?
Thank you so much for coming on. I hope we can stay in touch and talk more because you've been such you're so fun. You're so full of information, and I'm not going to cry, Michael. Shut up. It's really cool to meet somebody that's so full of faith and hope and can laugh at the situation, even though We
Right.
know that inside there's always that little.
Absolutely.
Um, but I hope that made sense. Like
It does. Yeah.
I'm
You
really blown away by you.
yeah, you have to be able to laugh about this stuff that is hard. You just, you have to be able to find a sense of humor. You can't, I don't think I would have gotten through it. I mean, had an awesome caregiver. I love my wife. We got through it together. Wouldn't have gotten through it without her, without my medical team. But sense of humor and hope is everything.
Well, I hope you come back again, and
Please, anytime.
and let's see what we can do together, what we can collaborate on,
Love
and
it.
do something. Because I mean, we're basically the same person, just kind of,
We are just half a country apart.
you
Exactly.
know. But thank you so much. Any last words before we go?
No, I think I'm good. Just, check out my website. And if you're interested, I have a book. It's not harder than cancer, but all the stuff that we've talked about, it's in there. So,
We didn't even get to the book, so we're gonna have to come back and talk about the book. Just
awesome.
and talk about that. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna put you in the green room for a second, and I'll be right back for you.
Okay.
For everybody watching, thank you so much. Remember that if you are watching us here, we've got more shows on the network. Make sure that you check us out at Little Mexican Productions. We've got the Christian and Daniel shows on Wednesdays, the Card Devo show on Fridays, and Put It Together Conversations, 2 shows on Saturdays at noon and 5. And occasionally we'll throw in a surprise show here and there. So make sure that you subscribe to any of the channels, either on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn, and subscribe, hit those notifications so that you can get the information when the shows are coming up. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, will you do us a favor and subscribe to the page and hit that like button? We really appreciate it. Also, my book is out, so make sure you go check that out, Grumpy Bunny and the Colors Game. It's a fun book for parents to read to their kids. And if you're an adult and you want to learn just a new way to meditate, go check it out. It's available at all the regular places, so go find it. It goes officially for release on May 21st. So if you're watching this before then, that's when it's released. If you're watching this after that, it's ready for delivery, so just make sure you order it. We also have wholesale prices for libraries, bookstores, or schools if you're interested. For now, I want to thank Michael for being on the show. Thank you all for following us, being part of the show. We sure do appreciate your support. For now, I just want to thank you for joining us. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and saying, hey, put it together. We'll see you next week.